Hello, and welcome back to On Air with Dr. Pete. I'm your host, Dr. Pete Economo, and May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we thought it would be a good idea to recap the month. We had some really amazing guests on, and it's interesting. And guests since then, and looking at the world that we're living in, and all over the world, there's different types of months that have all different themes, and Black History Month, and ALS a month, and MS month, and all these things are really important because we have to continue to combat those diagnoses, disorders that need more support, and we have to understand it more. And when I first started doing mental health treatment, I never thought it'd be what it is today, especially in the world of sports, that really going, from maybe one provider for an entire organization to now multiple providers, and the conversations are being had all over the place. So, May Mental Health Awareness Month, please tune in to some of those episodes. And if you didn't get a chance, I want to recap some of them. So Dr. Emmanuel Mercedes and I, so we jumped in about, being really, good friends, but also classmates. That's where our friendship began. We met in class, and he is a immigrant from the Dominican Republic, and the challenges that he brought with him that really led him into studying and now treating other people. And one of the things he said in that episode was like, leaving Dominican Republic with a bag, but then all the other bags that you carry, we're all carrying bags that you don't see. And it's a metaphor I've used a lot with clients I work with, where I'll say, just leave your bag here, kind of imagine that this office is a storage locker for you, and you don't have to take it with you. Manny has been working over 13 years of experience in New York and New Jersey, and we are involved, and he's been instrumental to the Latino Mental Health Organization. There's a national association as well as a state association. And so there will be people that think, oh, well, there's no need for that, or, that's diversity, that's DEI, and that's a bad word. And I'll just say that, recognition of differences is a power. It's a strength to say that we are different. And you need organizations like the Latino Mental Health Association to ensure that we have people that are committed to these diverse groups that have not sought or had access to care in the same way that others with privilege have. And that's ultimately what we think about with, as part of our conversation was, the role that mindfulness. And in that episode, he reminded me that I was the one that turned him on to meditation, which is, pretty cool. So for listeners that are maybe tuning in for the first time and you wanted to hear the recap, I mean, I have been practicing mindfulness meditation for many years, studying Zen for 15 years. I'm a Dharma holder and a sensei in the White Plum lineage of Zen, having studied with Robert Kennedy Roshi. And when Dr. Manny came to me, he was like, "Oh, I'm trying to deepen my practice." Like he had been doing some mindfulness stuff and some meditation when he and I were in school. Like it wasn't in the same kind of way that it is today. So and we talked about that, like how things have changed and mental health has changed, and he's changed, his family and all that type of stuff, because he's got some wonderful, beautiful children and a wonderful wife and all of that. So I think that was a really exciting episode because it was full circle. Like, I think it's really cool. Like, not everyone does the same thing. And so not everyone feels comfortable doing a podcast, or even has an interest. And so I was so thankful that he came on. And then the next one was super cool because it was a former student, Dr. Norna Jules. And that was all, because she, being a former student, it was so cool to have her there, because to watch her now as a licensed psychologist and working with individuals, families, and children, adolescents. So important. And because I don't work with adolescents. Once in a while, I will treat, an older adolescent, like somewhere in the, this is not scientific when I'm saying this, 15. I know it's not older adolescents, almost kind of getting there, but I have treated like a 15, 16-year-old that was like an elite athlete. And, that fits more in my wheelhouse, but just kind of general adolescence, it's a really, really tough time. I always joke and say, like, it reminds me of how awkward I was during my adolescence. And Dr. Norna Jules and I jumped in on that. And I think we even we like giggled about that, because she sees me as her professor, and this person, kind of doing some of the social media stuff and podcasts and on TV. But I was so proud to like see her sit there and talk about like neurodiversity and the impact of neurodevelopmental disorders. And so I say that, and I say that as if it was something I learned. I did not learn neurodiversity. And so somebody who's trained in multicultural competence, and diversity was a word that we use a lot, never around neurological processes. So I do want to say I find that quite curious, because I there is neurodiversity, but what I'm going to say as somebody who studies the brain, and as a psychologist, all of our brains are diverse, and so of course, and that's going to be a little provocative, and so there are going to be some people hearing that and not liking me say that. Now, there are diagnoses that now meet that criteria, things like autism spectrum disorder. But then what I'm also going to say is ADHD, OCD, anyone that's kind of behaving in a really organic behavioral diagnosis like those I just mentioned, that's neurodiversity. And what I know from like our imaging studies is that all things are pretty diverse in the brain, because most imaging doesn't tell us much. We look for little slight changes or activity changes in certain areas of the brain. But Dr. Norna Jules has made a lot of her career now in understanding how COVID has impacted teens, as well as social media and other external factors. So those are really important topics, because in today's world, we are so consumed by social media and by COVID. I mean, this cohort of people, I think right now, like those graduating college, I'm recording this in 2025. So May 2025 was that May Mental Health Awareness Month. And that this group that just graduated, this cohort, was entered college during COVID. So that might not be right, because 2020 was COVID. So this might be like the second class, but they were graduating high school during that. So anyway, around that same time period, that is really affecting, because these are really, as we know from neurodevelopmental science, as Dr. Norna Jules told us, it has a direct and significant impact on how the brain functions. Then Dr. Jason Krzysztofiak came. This was like such a cool month for me. So Dr. Krzysztofiak and I work very closely together at Rutgers Sports Health. He and I both work predominantly with the football team at Rutgers University. And so, we know each other very well. He wants to kind of embark on his social media journey, which is really cool to watch. And he's the chief sports medicine for Cooper and Barnabas Medical Center. And he is the team physician for the Rutgers football team. So we talked all about concussion and just the impact of interdisciplinary care, that we need a team. And so for anyone listening that for me, mental health awareness was like a little like whatever or soft or all that, or you're not sure who to go to, it does take a team. And so he, as a medical physician, he'll call me and lean on me often, and I'll do the same. Hey, this just happened. If an athlete describes something to me medically that I'm unsure of, I can call him up and get some more information. And so understanding that the role that he and I have developed this interdisciplinary team, especially like around, again, like I mentioned, concussion and the impact that concussion has on mental health, but also then on neuropsychological functioning. And so he's really involved in a lot of research around concussion and some of the new technology around there to both help treat and diagnose. And so, but interestingly, in that conversation, we didn't go too much into the hard science of concussion, and we really spent a lot of time just talking about general mental health and the role that it plays in both, the athlete's physical health and performance. And it was really cool for me to hear Dr. Krzysztofiak talk about the importance of mental health, because I'll also say that I'm a fake doc. I'm not a fake doctor, but I'm not a real doctor is what I'll say. So the world likes hierarchies, and there's hierarchies in all things, and mostly in the medical world, physicians are at the top. And even within physicians, there's MDs and DOs, different degrees, hierarchies established. I'm a PhD as a psychologist, and so that's why I joke and say I'm not a real doctor. One time at one of the basketball games, the head of security came over to me. He's like, "Oh, we need your help. There's someone on the second floor, second level that I think he's having a heart attack." And I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Now, I was trained in first aid and I would know what to do, but this was after the fact that I knew it was being cared of. I joked about it of like, I'm not the real doctor. And so it was just really cool for me in that conversation to recognize the role and how important he saw, mental health and even the work that he's doing. Dr. Erica Lander-Miller. Oh my God. So she and I go way back, and I guess I'm giving you some of the stories. You didn't realize that all these guests I've had relationships with, and maybe I'll do that every May, kind of a little carousel of my crew. And it's important to have a crew, right? I work with teams. I got my own team. These are my crew. So Erica's my crew, Dr. Miller. She and I were involved in co-establishing or establishing, I'll say she did most of the work, the Association for Contextual Behavioral Sciences in New Jersey. But we did a lot of work together around that. And she's got a thriving, amazing practice in New Jersey and specializes in cognitive and behavioral therapy for adolescent and children, and so really a critical thing. I will say I've always worked with adults, as I was saying earlier about Dr. Norma Jules. I've always worked with adults. Even in my residency, I was the one adult intern. There was 8 child interns and 1 adult, and I was the one. And that's just important to recognize because I used to say, hey, we should bring the children up to the adult unit so that they could see why it's important they work on their mental health now so that they don't become this later. And again, provocative statement, but it was one that was, sprinkled in with some truth that it's so critical, the role that Erica does at her practice, Behavioral Care Center of New Jersey, treating children and adolescents, because they, you start young, early intervention. If you can get to the root of some of the challenges that these children are having, as an adult, they won't need it. And especially since she practices in the same domain that I do, cognitive behavioral therapy, her job is to not have a job. So, just like I always say, her job is to sit there and give the family, give the parents. And that's the thing about child and adolescent therapy, is that the family has to be involved. So I think sometimes people are, dropping off their kids and being like, okay, fix my kids. And the reality of it is that's not what we do. We help and we improve, but it's got to be the whole system that's involved. And Dr. Miller, that was a great episode. I had a lot of fun with that, because the thing about Dr. Miller that's so cool is she is brilliant. But she doesn't always celebrate her brilliance. And one thing I'll share, if you knew me, you would know that I love to make people feel good. I know that sounds cheesy, but I love to empower. And I could just see that she doesn't see how brilliant she is. And that episode, you will get a lot of tips from her, especially for parents of children and adolescents, because she had these gems of techniques that were really critical, for parents to implement. And then to wrap up May Mental Health Awareness Month, it was a deep, deep, deep episode where it was Samara and I. Samara and her husband founded Endurant, and her husband Neil, and that was after their son, who was diagnosed with autism his whole life, completed suicide. And they really did a lot for their child. They have a daughter still. And a lot because the conversation was around the frustrations of finding the appropriate care, finding care in general, and how really difficult it can be to do so. And Samara and her husband, Neil, really did everything. They did everything they could to try and give their son as much. It was Anthony, because that's why they call it Endurant. Ant is capital at the end. They did everything to try and give him some services, and he was asking for it. Like, he knew something wasn't right, and he just had this pain, and obviously potentially complicated with autism and some other challenges and the mental health. And so Endurant, they have now committed to suicide prevention, a special focus on mental health, and then especially for neurodivergent individuals. And so it was a real, and actually it was a cool part about that was that Samara is connected with our producer, Lee Castelli. And so that's how Samara came to us and got on the show. And it was really just such a heavy, deep episode, because it was the first one Samara did on her own. She often did it with her husband, Neil. And she said that he would usually kind of take the wheel and she would chime in. But he had another commitment to do for, I think, a high school or some other organization where he was speaking about men's mental health. So again, very important work that they're doing. And it was so cool. So I got Samara to myself, and it was just she and I having a conversation about mental health and the journey, kind of leading up to her son's suicide, and then what they've done after. Very, very powerful episode. So that was the last one in May. So if you have not heard that or listened to that episode, please, go jump on in to hear it. So May Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, just because May is over doesn't mean we're not going to give you more. I mean, pretty much every episode. I'm going to close on this. I started a show called The Shrinks, and by started, I mean it's just a concept years ago, and it's called The Shrinks, and it is like a bunch of diverse perspectives, diagnosing and dissecting why people do what they do, and conversations around it, and it is just so critical, and I say that because on Air with Dr. Pete, like even though I bring you all different types of news, the lens that I see things through is through the scientific lens of learning theory and behaviorism. That we are beings that act in patterns, and the goal for us as cognitive behavioral therapists are to identify patterns and break maladaptive ones. And so I will often see some sort of patterns or science in the behavior. So that's why when you tune into On Air with Dr. Pete, even if it's June, July, August, September, if it's not May, you still will hear and learn about mental health because it's important. It is a big piece of our well-being, and all that. So I thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have any issues, we have tons of different resources on the website. NAMI and different referral sources that if you yourself are struggling with mental health, there are resources out there. There's organizations like Endurant, that we had on at the end of the month, and lots of different. Every state association would have some kind of resources for people that are struggling. So it's not easy, and I hate that about the field. But medicine's not easy, and so it's complicated. It's a really robust system, and so there's checking the show notes if you have any issues there. You kind of link to some resources, but. So thankful for you tuning in, for your support. I always encourage you to like, follow, and share. Everything is at Official Dr. Pete. We will be back next week, as always, bringing you some new topics for the summer. So until then, spread a little kindness and stay well.